Blog Talk Radio.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
Julie.
Huh?
Julie.
Huh? Guess what day it is?
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is?
Anybody? Anybody?
Mike.
Huh?
What day is it, Mike?
Huh? Woo-hoo!
Leslie, guess what today is? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's Hump Day.
Hump day!
It's Hump Day.
Hump day!
Welcome to the Donelson Files. This is Tom Donelson and Coco Konski. And as you know, it's Hump Day. I just love that song. I really do. You know, I'm really glad that our good guy, Mr. Bachelor, found that for us. And just wanted to, I guess I'll introduce myself first. I am the chairman of America's PAC, and I am also the project director of America's Majority Foundation. And Coco, why don't you tell the world what a great person you are?
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Coco, and I'm a writer. I work in film. I have dogs, and I do the show every Tuesday and Wednesdays.
And also, just to remind everybody, on the Bachelor News Radio Network, if you go to bachelornews.airtime.pro, you can also get the rest of our schedule, because it's not just Tuesday, not just Wednesday, but we're also on twice a day on the Bachelor Radio News Network, which you can get on the bachelorpadnetwork.com, 3 and 4 in the morning, or at midnight in California, followed by 10 to 11 Eastern Standard Time, 9 to 10 Central Time. The Donelson Files. That's like, Christ, I mean, that's like 12 times a week. I don't know about you, Coco, but that's, you know.
That's a lot of times.
That's a lot of time, yeah. I mean, it's like I say, not only that, but you can also go on the bachelorpadnetwork.com, and if you just want to simply listen to this at your convenience, well, all you got to do is you go to the Bachelor News Radio Network. We got all of our programs listed right there. Bachelor News Show, the Donelson Files, the Dr. Larry Show, Locker Talks, Sandy's Secrets, plus LA's got news, politics, op-eds, sports, and everything else. So, and we also have our own website, the DonelsonTFiles.com. And
yes, we do.
It's at
yes.
Donelson
Although
Files.
I am not on Twitter. I am on Instagram. So, and I will be posting a very interesting kind of article next week, if I can talk about that a little, Tom.
Oh, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So, I know Halloween is over, but I've always been a believer in the paranormal, and I recently had something happen. I'm visiting my parents right now, and I decided to take a nap before the show. And it's not the first time this has actually happened to me, but it is the first time it has happened to me while I was awake. I get up, and I start feeling like this, like, really burned, like, if you guys have cats or dogs, like, when they scratch you. So I woke up, you know, I was, like, fine, had no scratches. I sit down, I go into, like, an old room of mine, and I sit down, and I feel like this burning sensation. I literally go to the bathroom, I pull my pants down, and I have, like, these claw marks on, like, the outside of my thigh all the way to the inside of my thigh. And it's not the first time it's happened. So I decided, you know what, this would be a great article to kind of do, just to talk about different paranormal experiences. You know, I was never really a big believer until, like, my parents bought this house, and just really weird things, will happen. So I thought if anybody could relate to that. Right now I'm in a lot of pain because, the scratches are now bleeding. I don't have fingernails, so it's and when I do, I have acrylics, and I don't have my acrylics on right now. So it was basically impossible for me to, scratch myself that deeply. And I didn't have my dog with me at the time. So just really weird paranormal things happened to me, and I decided to write about that. And if you guys are interested, and if you guys actually have experiences yourselves, you guys could just message me on Instagram or Facebook. That is Coco, Konski. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. And I hope I won't die. So that was
okay.
That was no.
Yeah.
I mean, it was scary. I mean, it really hurts, Tom. It's the way I can describe it. Yeah.
So let me get this straight. I want to make sure I understand this. So your dog was not in the room with you, right?
No, he was not.
It's basically you're sleeping, and
I was sleeping and I woke up, and then I get up for a minute, and I never fall asleep in that room. And I just stood up for a second, and then I got this burning, as if I don't know, someone scratched me. That's when someone really scratches you really deep, and it's just ow. And I took pictures, and I had pictures. It looks gnarly. It looks it looks like I was just attacked by an animal, basically. But my dog wasn't with me. I don't have nails. There's no way I could scratch myself like that. And it's not the first time it's happened to me here. And it's only when I'm in this house that it'll happen. So I'm not saying my house is haunted, but there is definitely a presence in here. And I will be staging.
Yeah.
I will be staging tonight.
Let me ask you a question. So you state that your house, this happens here. What was the history of your house before your parents bought it?
That I don't know. I just know it's super old. I know it was built in 1920, so it's almost 100 years old. And I know what?
Yeah, no, it's 100. Yeah, so you got 100 years old.
It's about 100 years old. It's in a really old area of Los Angeles. But like I said, it's not the first time I've woken up to scratches. So it was or sometimes I'll wake up to bruises. It's really weird. But it's if I'm staying at another place with my boyfriend, I don't get any of that. Completely clean. I staged our place before even going there. But I'll come here and I'll wake up bruises, scratches, and it's just it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard me on the phone, and I was cursing. I was oh my God, this is so painful. And it's if you look at it, I took pictures, and it just looks like a hand just literally just with nails as long as whatever, just scratched the hell out of me. I mean, now it's all over my leg. It looks like someone was trying to grab me. It's really crazy. But like I said, it's not the first time it's happened, but it's the first time where it's been really painful. Because usually I'll be asleep when I wake up with it. This time I was not asleep. And that's scary.
Yeah.
That's the scary part. Because when you're asleep, you're well, maybe I scratched myself. But when you're awake, you're no, I didn't just scratch myself. So I don't know how the hell I got these. But it literally looks like my leg right now looks like I was just basically attacked by some animal. So I wanted to write about it. I've always had kind of experiences with the paranormal, and I've always been curious as to others how they how they experience other stuff. So I've always been really interested in that.
Right.
But right now I'm icing my leg because it hurts a lot.
Yeah, no, the only thing I would suggest is you ought to take a look at the history of that of your house to see if something's there. Take a look at. I meuld do a history of your house. See if you can find out things about your house. whether or not, for example, if a dog or a cat somehow another died there unofficially. I don't know. And like I say, and for people to know, like I say, right now, since we're not on television, so we can't see this, but
right.
you've just sent me a picture of these scratches. And,
it was like,
they're.
Isn't that gnarly?
Yeah.
That's
gnarly.
not like a human, that's not a human, scratch.
Yeah.
So, if you do want to get rid of, spirits, saging is the way to go. I have sage. I have not saged that room. I will be saging the hell out of it tonight. And you sage yourself as well. Saging is very good for the atmosphere. It smells nice. It supposedly gets rid of negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'll tell you, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, here's what we're going to do real quick here, because this is Tom Donelson, the Donelson Files, and we will, and we are based on the Bachelor News Radio Network. Tonight is we're talking the latest strange stories, latest that's going happening. But before we do, we got to take a quick break, because I want to ask you more about staging and have you explain to the audience what this is. So, but before we do, we have to listen to this.
If you want to hear another view of the latest developments in Trump's Washington, listen to the Dr. Larry Show. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Dr. Larry is a former businessman, entrepreneur, college president, and author who provides background and context for current events and trends in politics, education, foreign policy, and religion from a conservative perspective. Tune in and hear the other side as Dr. Larry talks with Washington insiders exclusively on blogtalkradio.com and the podcast at thebachelorpadnetwork.com.
Yes, that's the Dr. Larry Show. The Dr. Larry Show follows us every Wednesday. Plus, if you go look at our schedule at 1 a.m. on Pacific time, you follow the Donelson Files, along with, if you're on the Eastern Standard Time, at 11 p.m. every day, 11 a.m. every day. So, it's like the Donelson Files followed by the Dr. Larry Show. Just to kind of, so, again, would you want to find out more about this? It's the bachelornews.airtime.pro. Also, you go to the, if you go to bachelorpadnetwork.com, you can go on any of the great programmings on the Bachelor News Radio Network. And I want people to know, for those people, I'm going to now direct this to advertisers and people out there who say, how can I reach people? I'm going to tell you, you can reach over 1 million people on our show, plus hundreds of thousands, plus on our other programs. We are reaching millions of people either through the News Radio Network on our live shows on every Tuesday and Wednesday, along with the Bachelor Pad and the Dr. Larry Show. So give us a call and let's talk about this, because I'm going to tell you, here's the thing. You get some of the smartest people listening to our shows that you can see. We have a mixture of people across the line, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, with a lot of disposable income. And you just pick a group you want to hit. We'll help you hit that group. And like I say, millions of people every week. So I'm going to say, this is your opportunity to make money, get the right group of people. Call us, talk to us. And all you got to do is just go to the Bachelor News Radio Network, bachelorpadnetwork.com. Okay, now, explain to the audience staging.
Okay. All right. So for those who just tuned in, I just talked about waking up or feeling scratches on me while I was awake. And staging is something very helpful. It's like an herb, obviously, and you burn. It's like incense, and you go around your house. You have this little feather or whatever, and you just walk around your home and you just use that. You just do a walkthrough. and it's supposedly supposed to get rid of, bad juju, negative energy. There's a lot of ways to get rid of negative energy. Like I said, I'm very much into the paranormal. Just because of all the experiences I've had in it. I never really was a believer until I started, having certain experiences. And like I said, sometimes when I'm at my parents', I will wake up in scratches. And I literally just texted my boyfriend this, and he literally sent me an article right now, which is very interesting, and I'm pretty sure he didn't mean to scare me, but now I'm like a little freaked out. If you have scratches of 3s, like what I kind of do, that could kind of mean demonic. That is like a demonic type thing. When you hear, if you're in a house 3 a.m. and you hear 3 knocks, that is actually considered an insult to St. John. It's the 3 knocks. It's not good. So yeah, I've always really been interested in it. And I do experience stuff from time to time, but this is the first time in my life where I have experienced a scratch while awake. And that was very, very unsettling, to say the least. So I will be saging right after the show. I have sage. I have my feather. I'm just going to go through the entire house and just sage and sage and sage. But, so like I said, if you guys have any experiences, like, feel free to call in and talk about it, because, like I said, I was pretty skeptic at first, and then I started, having, like, these, like, feelings, or, when you can walk into a house, Tom, and you walk into someone else's house, and you have, like, a complete different energy, than your house. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but you can just feel like something's, like, kind of off. Like someone's watching. When someone's watching you, but, like, no one's there. So I get that feeling all the time when I'm at my parents'. They don't really believe it, and I'm just like, but, I literally have, like, you saw the scratches. They literally look like I was attacked by, like, a raccoon or something. Like, it looks like I was attacked by, like, some crazy animal. And, like, it's not the first time I get these. So, but it was, like, the first time where it hurts, like, bad. I mean, some of them are actually kind of, like, bleeding right now. So it's like, But, so I decided to write a little article on it, and, hopefully people would be like, oh, well, she's not crazy. And I'm like, honestly, I don't care if people think I'm crazy or not. Like, I always photograph my scratches. I always document, because, like, sometimes I'll have them and then they'll go away the next day. Like, it's really weird. So, there you have it. Yeah.
Well, that is absolutely weird. Well, part of this, ladies and gentlemen, here's the thing. Like I said, we got a bunch of weird stories to tell and talk about, but there's a couple of things we're going to start getting into beforehand. Then we're going to get back to some of these strange stories. And, why I am at it. We keep an eye on for the Donelson Files, because as everybody knows, once a month we have a special relationship program. Now, normally it's the fourth week of the month, but we may schedule it the week either November 19th or 20th, because the following week is going into the Thanksgiving weekend. So
it is. It is.
And so we may have it a week earlier. And here's a story that I came up with, and like I say, I know we could talk briefly about it now, but I would love to save a good portion of this or get back to it for relationship. Because here's the story. Okay. What women look for when choosing a partner for casual sex. And
Okay.
now, again, some of the things they put, you need to be taller than her. But you don't
that
necessarily
never
need
bothered
to be,
me.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily need to be smarter.
Okay, well, no,
But I
that's
love
a total lie. That's a total lie for me. I was like, I'd rather you be like shorter, and like I have to have someone who's smart. I can't, even if it's just casual.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing I love. Hair is great, but only if it's on your face.
Not true.
So,
I like
that's
hair. Who wrote this? I'm like, usually I agree.
Diana Bruck, B-R-U-K.
Well, Diana is wrong. So, no, I don't at all. I love facial hair, and I also like I don't want him to be like, hairy. Obviously where he has to like brush his own back hair. But I do appreciate hair on a guy. Like, I'm very, very happy that I found the guy that I'm with, because he's like literally perfect when it comes to that.
Well, and you don't have to be buff. That was the other thing. Don't have to be buff.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I agree with that.
And then the last, so like I said, so we may bring this back up on our show coming up. And oh yeah, I love this one. Don't forget to smile.
Oh, please. Screw that. Screw that. Who wrote this? Seriously, what the hell?
No, it's a lady. It's on MSN.com, and it's a lady named Diana Bruck. Let me see if I can find. Yeah. And well, she's a writer, editor, life enthusiast, and was born in Russia. I love this, creative writing at Sarah Lawrence College. So, that's like I said. So that's who wrote this. So. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, I've never heard of her before myself, and being that you are one of the relationship experts, certainly on the Bachelor News Radio Network. So I just had, again, like I say, it's something worth bringing up in a couple of weeks, and along with everything else. All right. Now, this is one of those stories. I'm going to be honest. I mean, if people ask me a question about, what's your belief on climate change, I'll say, to me, I've looked at the science all over the place. Back before I've talked to people all over the place, and I'm one of those who say the science is not yet settled after looking at the data. But here's when I see stories like this. This is when I say to myself, if you want me to take your science seriously, quit putting stuff like this out. Okay, asthma carbon footprint as big as eating meat. In other words, if you use an inhaler for asthma, you are causing climate change.
Oh, okay, I guess I'm causing climate change. I used my inhaler 3 times this week, so oh well. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, and like the comparing it to eating meat, which to me is another one of those. Okay, so here's what you're telling me: don't be a meat eater. These are the same group of people saying, pets and dogs and cats are causing climate change. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, if you're going to say, in effect, I'm going to have to quit having dogs, quit eating meat. If you're going to tell people who have asthma they can't get treated. You're basically saying, in effect, we have to live a monk's life like in the 19th century to save the planet. If this is your solution, I'm ready to just say that even if it's true, I'm saying, what the hell with it? Let's all burn to death. But this is what I mean. I mean, these are the kinds of things.
that's a bit far. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, like, people have asthma. They're going to use their inhaler. And you know what? Honestly, I'd rather watch the world burn than me not being able to breathe. I don't know if any of you guys have had experiences with asthma, but I'll tell you right now, it is the worst feeling on this planet. There are times where if I don't have my inhaler, I start hyperventilating. And when you hyperventilate, you know, some people with like severe asthma, kind of like myself, they have this thing where you turn blue. And it's not it's not fun. I don't wish asthma on anyone. It sucks, to be honest. It really sucks.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just. I mean, these are the things you look at. Because like I said, I spent 26 years in pharmaceutical business. I read thousands of medical and scientific journals. I even spent a year, working with companies to teach their people how better to read medical journals and how to read them. So it's not like I don't understand the science. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but after listening to some of the so-called experts I've been reading recently, I'm not sure that it doesn't take, and a friend of mine once said, you could, what it takes to get a PhD anymore is relatively a small, there are a lot of PhDs that I sit back and ask myself, how the hell did you get a PhD? But
right.
And so I get the science, and I understand how all of this works out. And I can say, I've looked at it enough to say there's enough doubts about the theory of whether human and CO2 are the main causative agent. I'm not going to say I'm the expert. I'm going to say I know enough about it to say there's doubts. But when you read these kinds of stories, where people are being told, in effect, you're going to have to change your entire life. That's when that's when you have to start asking yourself, if you're going to basically turn us back to the 19th century with no automobiles, we do no meat, live off the land. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to basically say, well, I'll take the end of the world at the moment. But I mean, these are things that these are articles that get published, gets accepted, and you got to ask yourself, if you want to be serious about this, show some serious science. But if you're going to sit back and promote this kind of idiocy, and I'm going to use the word idiocy, don't be surprised when people say, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I mean, if you're going to have a serious scientific discussion, it's one thing. But when you sit back and you reinvent some of this, you look at some of this stuff, when it's like, I think it was Bill McKibben. He's a big, he's one of the, I'm not sure, he used to run an organization called 350.org. And years ago, he was, giving a speech and talking about what he's done. And he was sitting there telling people, we're going to have to make sure you can use your cell phone for 30 minutes at the most. And I'm thinking to myself, how many people, if they're told you can only do business 30 minutes on your cell phone?
That's laughable. That's laughable.
Yeah. But, and it's like when I read, as much as I like Andrew Yang, there's aspects of it, that there are times in which he actually sounds normal. Well, one of those times he did is when he says, I'm going to put platforms up in space, mirrors in space to deflect the sun. And I'm like, okay, I thought you were normal, but that is crazy. That's crazy. And all this comes into play because, like I say, we basically have officially withdrawn from the Paris Agreement. We basically say goodbye, adios. We're not playing. We're not going to, be part of this effort to quote unquote save the planet. We're in effect going to worry about our own economics. And so it does. So we are now into that debate. And if you're going to get into this debate, you better have serious thoughts, serious ideas that don't begin with kill your dog, kill your cat. If you got asthma, take a gun and shoot yourself because we're not going to let yourself use treatment. And that hamburger you ate can no longer be made of meat. We're going to take a quick break. It's Tom Donelson with the Coco Konski on the Donelson Files on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Hey, this is L.A. Bachelor reminding you if you're looking for real discussion on sports, politics, religion, and other topics, you need to join us on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern at WCOMFM.org, on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at blogtalkradio.com/LA-Bachelor, and on Thursdays at the same web address. Follow us on Facebook at Pad Nation, on Twitter, Pad Nation, the number 2 at Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can email us with your requests, your comments, your concerns, anything you want at our email address at LABachelor with a T, BATCHELOR 40 at gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Pad Nation, Instagram, and of course, if you miss any part of our broadcast, make sure you go to thebachelorpadnetwork.com and listen and enjoy the Bachelor Pad.
Yeah, the Bachelor News Radio Show, Bachelor Pad, great show. Here's the thing: you got all the times. Tuesday follows the Donelson Files, plus you got the Thursday shows, and also if you go on our website, the Bachelor Pad, BachelorPadNetwork.com, you can basically listen to the show 6 to 8 Eastern time every day. So you get so you can get some really great programming, and also WCOM does also do the Bachelor Radio News Network programming at 6 if you live in the Chapel Hill area, WCOM.com. And if you want to get more on the scheduling, bachelornews.airtime.pro. If you would have been this week's show, you would have heard Dr. Leon and Dr. Federer talking and discussion, and there was a great discussion also dealing with, let's say, the Florida State head coach, and the question was asked, whether or not he'll be fired, and as a black head coach, was he going to be given the opportunity? And I thought it was that was kind of a great discussion that they were having on that as well. So those are the things you go back and listen to it and follow up on those great shows as well. All right, I'm going to talk about, I don't know if you caught this story where they caught an ABC reporter basically saying, I had this story about him, and ABC spiked my own story. I don't know if you caught that.
Yes,
story.
Yeah.
And the reason I want to kind of talk very brief about that is because we have had people on our show who know what they're talking about when it comes to back, did he commit suicide? Did he not? And last Wednesday,
I just like to say Epstein killed himself. Did you see the Fox News interview? Did you see this Fox News interview where he goes and he starts talking about canines, and he goes, "Oh, may I take a PSA?" And Jesse Walters is like, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Well, these dogs are very lovable, but you should be very careful. Also, Epstein didn't kill himself." And it was like a live video, and Jesse Walters' face was like, "Okay, we're gonna cut to commercial." It was hilarious. I was laughing really hard when I saw that.
Well, here's
everybody knew he didn't kill himself. Like, I never for once said he didn't kill himself. Like, I knew he didn't kill himself. But what I was saying, it was like to say it was like the Clintons, like conspiracy theory. Like, come on, that was just stupid. But no, I definitely believe he didn't kill himself. Are you kidding?
Now, well, here's the thing. I mean, because we've had people come on the show, and last week on we had like a 20-plus year police veteran, and we had our friend Pam, and they both kind of discussed, gave their opinions, and gave different angles why it could be, why he probably may have killed himself, why he did not kill himself with, again, and using and quoting the science. So I want people to go back to the October 30th program on our show. Go back to that show. Go the last 10 minutes, and there's going to be a good discussion one way or the other. Now the police made the case. He made a good case. There are things that would convince him that something was amiss. And Pam's response was, okay, I can see that point, but she also said you got to be suspicious when you have attorneys paying somebody for an autopsy, and what are they paying for? Follow the money. It was a nice discussion, very balanced, with two people who knew what they were talking about. But here's the thing with the ABC story, and this is my view, is, and we're and this I'm seeing this more and more with a lot of news reporting, where there are stories we find out later they either get spiked or they don't get covered, or you'll get a coverage of it.
Yes, but
and
this came from Buckingham Palace orders.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
this wasn't.
Well, I guess go ahead.
This,
okay.
and,
Explain to people. Explain to people why. What?
Okay, I'll explain to people why this came from Buckingham Palace. Well, a certain royal was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, Andy, Prince Andrew was involved heavily with Epstein and attended all his parties. So obviously, Buckingham Palace wants this to go away, and so they received a letter from Buckingham Palace's press or whatever not to air the story.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had another theory on that as well, but it had nothing to do with Buckingham Palace. Namely, Hillary Clinton's running for president, and I'm not. Yeah, I'm not going to say.
Stop.
No. Wait, listen to what I'm saying here.
No.
Listen carefully. What I'm going to say, I'm not saying that Bill Clinton did anything illegal or anything, but there was an involvement of Epstein with the Clintons, including the Clinton Foundation, and had and if you would have had to even spend minutes discussing this issue, one way or the other. And for me, I will say to you that too played a role. At someplace, somewhere, somebody said, let's not deal with this because we're going to have this fall back. And I notice what I didn't say is that Bill Clinton was involved in anything illegal. I'm just simply saying there was a relationship. And you know as well as I do in politics, this takes up a life on its own. Whether, but to say that it wouldn't have played a role when you have sitting there on one of the top ABC stories, news program, George Stephanopoulos, who just happens to be one of the Clintonistas.
Oh my God! Stop with that conspiracy BS. This is nothing more than just Buckingham Palace wanting to kill a story because lovely Prince Andy, had been involved with Epstein. It's not like a secret. There were witnesses. He would visit. He would have these girls come to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. I'm not going to discount the Clinton angle. It's just simply because of the fact that they were.
Wait. So you're saying Hillary Clinton put a hit out on him? Come on.
No. Did I say? No, I did not say that. What I stated, and let me repeat myself very carefully.
Okay.
I stated, I am not making the case that Bill Clinton did anything wrong or was involved in any, within the underage sex part of the equation. What I stated is that there was a relationship with Epstein, with the Clintons, including donations to the foundation. You have something like this come up in the election, it takes a life on its own.
Yeah, but everybody knew about that already. People already knew about that.
Yeah.
It
wasn't
something
why kill
new.
the story? Yeah. No,
because
but
of
I
Buckingham
don't.
Palace. What do you mean why?
No, I'm just, I don't buy. I'm just saying. I guarantee you that George Stephanopoulos, somewhere along the line, said we're not going to bring this up. But no doubt about it, they did spike the story. That's the other aspect that comes into play. ABC spiked the story, regardless of the reason. They spiked the story, which is another aspect that comes into play here, is namely, I think people have the right to know things like this. You spike a story to protect what powerful people you want to protect. And then, people use, and I'll put it this way, and we're going to take a quick break after this, and then we'll get back to it. People hate, I know that people in the media hate the fake news moniker, but when you see things like this happen, and you're watching the news, and and you're having to be thinking to yourself, they are spiking stories of importance of this nature. The word fake news does come into play, namely you, by editing, are itself killing stories that should be out there. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Tom Donelson, Coco Konski on the Donelson Files, Bachelor News Radio Network.
Join Barry Barnes for Locker Talk on the Bachelor Pad Network as he presents NFL news and evaluates players. Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com.
Yes, 9 a.m.
Right here,
yeah.
guys.
Okay, we are now back live. The Donelson Files. And, okay, again, the Locker Talk, Friday, 9 a.m. Also, if you go to Saturday at noon, Locker Talk is on Saturday noon on the Bachelor News Radio Network. And on Sunday at 11 a.m. before the NFL games. So you got numerous opportunities. Plus, whenever you want to listen to it, you go to the BachelorPadNetwork.com, BachelorPadNetwork.com, and we'll put you right there on the Bachelor News Radio Network, and you can listen to this show anytime. Okay. Okay, now we're talking. Okay. All right. Well, I guess because I can say, as somebody who's dealt with the media, who's been inside a newsroom, and what you saw here is an example of what we've been seeing for years, where stories get deep sixed, or they get ignored, or they just simply, okay, you'll get 2 or 3 mentions, and boom. And I would say, and I have to be honest with you, I'm not going to use the word conspiratorial, but I can certainly tell you that there are certain narratives that certain people within the media want to promote, and they don't want to promote. This is an example of one of those narratives that they didn't want to promote. Your thoughts?
I'm not going to go into the whole conspiracy theory because, I'm not going to go and be like, okay, the Clintons had something to do with it when, that's absolutely not the case. I think someone way higher level had something to do with this. Whatever happened, I don't believe he killed himself. And, will we ever know who did it? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we probably don't. Like I say, I'm now becoming more and more convinced. 2 weeks. If you would have asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said he did. I'm kind of leaning in that other direction now. But like I say, I tell you what I want people to do. October 30th, the Donelson Files program. Go back to that program. We have, at the last 10, 15 minutes, we have that discussion. We'll let people decide. We have 2 people who know what they're talking about, discussing this issue, and taking the conspiratorial side out of the equation, and you can decide for yourself. Because on our show, we do have people who know what they're talking about when they come on the air. Okay. Now, the other thing that I found to be interesting here was this story that came out of, let me see if I get, most recent, interesting poll here, and I want to kind of get your feedback as the member of as our political observer on the Democratic side of the equation. A Quinnipiac poll actually has Mayor Pete, Elizabeth Warren, pretty much almost dead even, Sanders a couple of points behind. In other words, we're seeing Mayor Pete rise up like a bullet recently. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys watched SNL, but I saw a clip of God. I love. Oh my God, her name is blanking me now.
Kate
but
McKinnon.
She doesn't.
Kate McKinnon.
Yeah, she did
Kate
such a great Elizabeth Warren. Like, I'm watching this and I'm like, is that actually Elizabeth Warren? It was really great. I just want to bring that up because I am voting for Warren, but Mayor Pete, like, he's great too. Like, I love him, and like he's someone like I more relate to than Warren, but I know he's not going to get it. So I'm going to go for the person who I think really can win.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like I say, it's kind of interesting the way he's come on, and I think in part is, and I would say part of what I see with the story that he's doing, I mean, is this. Over the last couple of weeks, I mean, here's the bottom line comes with Elizabeth Warren, is this. Her proposal, Medicare for All, she's basically telling everybody, I'm not going to tax the middle class. But you look at her proposal and you look at the way she's trying to explain her proposal and the use of the wealth tax, the tax of rich and all that, the reality is everybody knows the money's not there. And even if you look at her wealth tax, which now seems to be going up and up and up, there's a reason why the Europeans, for the most part, who have tried to, I would say 80% of the Europeans who have tried the wealth tax have gotten rid of it. And they did it at a lower level than what she's doing. Now, Mayor Pete, I think, is nuancing this issue very interestingly. I call it the you can keep your plan if you like it routine. I heard that one before. But here's what he's saying. You can have Medicare for all, or you can keep the plan you have. He's trying to leave the door open in such a way not to make it sound as draconian. Because when people hear Medicare for all, what they're hearing is, I'm going to lose my private health care plan. And the government would determine my health care. And if you're a senior citizen, you're hearing this. Right now they're going through the enrollment process, and you're basically hearing, well, everything I'm enrolling in, you're going to take away from me. That's what they hear. And it's going to be, I'm wondering how much of this is starting to come through to people and saying, who's going to pay for all of this, and how much am I going to get charged for all of this? And the one thing Bernie Sanders made clear, I'm taxing you, the middle class, to pay for this. You're going to love what I give you, but you're going to pay for this. And Elizabeth Warren is trying to say, no, I don't want to. She's not going to admit, I'm going to hit you. And I think what Mayor Pete's doing, he's trying to find that fine line that says, I don't sound as radical as everybody else.
Right.
And it's starting to have it's starting to play there. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, like I said, we're going to see what happens. And
yeah. I mean, it's like you said. But the other guy, the other thing that surprised me is how strong Sanders has stayed. I mean, I thought after his heart attack, you'll be like, okay, people will be thinking to themselves, okay, let's just go with somebody who might actually live for the primary. I hate to be that blunt about it, but you have to imagine people think in those terms. Would you agree?
Yeah. He's a strong guy, man. He's not just gonna like give up and leave. He's not gonna fight till it the end.
Yeah. And I think, quite frankly, I mean, like I said, to me is I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm just amazed that he's still, like I say, he's in third place on the national polls. He's in third place in Iowa. He's not that far behind Warren in New Hampshire. He's within striking distance of Nevada. I mean, the only state really that he's not, he's far behind is in South Carolina, where Joe Biden's got everybody up by a wide margin. But he's not lost ground. And I think that's interesting. That he's not only he's not lost ground, but he's gained 2 or 3 points back. It's because I thought for 3 weeks ago I was under the impression Warren's the momentum's gonna go in her direction. It's time for her to take the horn and start moving forward, but she's been stagnant.
Right.
For the most part. She's been stagnant for the most part. And that has kind of surprised me. I don't know if it's going to be kind of interesting at this point because basically he's making the case.
He's a fighter, and that's one thing about Bernie is that he does not give up. Like he's going to fight till the end, and you got to admire that about someone. Like you had a heart attack and you're still fighting. Like I admire that. I mean, I think it's insanity, but I still admire it.
Well, I mean, like I said, we've had a discussion. My view is very simply put, it's always been is that people like Bernie live for the cause. That's what they are. They are the cause. Everything for the cause. That's how they operate. That's how they think. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm a political operator. I do this for a living, but to be honest with you, I have another life. I don't, I have another life, and people like Bernie, I doubt that they have another life. They don't sit back and watch football on Sunday. They're probably reading Das Kapital for all I know.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so and that's how these people operate. That's the mindset, and but I just think that I'm looking at this and I'm seeing myself, and Iowa's an interesting state because it's an activist state. This is not New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is your state where independents can vote in any primary. They are the largest group of voters in that state. And it's always going to be unpredictable which way they go as we get closer to the New Hampshire primary. It's going to be difficult to guess how they go. And in the case of Iowa, this is about a ground game. You better have a ground game. You better have because it's all about the activist. As I state to people, when people ask me about the difference between Iowa and New Hampshire, I say, here's the difference. In New Hampshire, you go to the poll, you pull the lever, you leave. You're voting. In Iowa, you show up and you sit there for an hour and a half talking politics. And anybody who's been out on an Iowa winter Monday night in January will know one thing. It's cold. It snows on the ground. It may be a snow blizzard. The kinds of people who show up at a caucus are not the same people who show up and vote in a primary. And it's a totally different set of rules that you look at. So now we got about 5 minutes left before we turn this over to the Dr. Larry Show. And let me see. And there was, like I say, there's some of these stories that just strike me as. Of course, I do have to look at this one. This is an interesting story about the vegan who becomes a butcher.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, I know. That's just one of those interesting stories that you read this story and you're like, yeah, it's just in a way it's kind of a humorous story because basically, okay, it's a woman lived as a vegetarian for 10 years, craved meat. I guess when she was pregnant with her third child, for some reason she had an urge to start eating meat. And
that happens.
And so everything changed. She said, for some reason, and this is, I guess this is down in Australia, she was down in a burger, and all of a sudden she says, "Oh God, this is good." She felt fantastic, started eating beef, and now she's a butcher.
Well, good for her.
Good for her. Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
Like, I have friends who are amazing and they're vegans, so I don't,
Yeah.
try to hate on anybody.
I mean, I don't hate on it. It's just one of those stories where, because she was inspired by a guy named Peter Singer, who wrote a book called Animal Liberation, and I guess now she's no longer for animal liberation, at least on the dinner plate. But this is one of my favorite stories. This story to me is one of those stories like Navy doomsday plane built to withstand a nuclear attack grounded after hitting a single bird. I don't know about you. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you sit back, you plan this thing out, you built this plane. It's supposed to be a powerful plane that can survive about any worst case scenario. A bird gets sucked into the engine, and next thing you know, it's going nowhere. It's a $141 million plane, and that's going to survive doomsday, and a bird sends it, and a bird ends it. Does that give you confidence in your military there? In the military-industrial complex? Hello?
I said not at all.
Oh, no, okay. Didn't hear you a second. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's just like one of those stories you look at and you say to yourself, you spent $140 million on this plane, and the first time a bird gets into the engine, it ends it. Now, I would hate to have to be the person who goes back to his, to the manager of the company and says, I think we overlooked something. Yeah, I think we overlooked something. So, all right. Well, we are getting to that point. It's almost about 2 minutes. So,
right.
And so I guess the question I'm going to ask you is, immediately after this show, you're going to start beginning the staging?
Yes, I am. Absolutely.
Yeah. And for those people who may not know what we're talking about, Coco lives in a house that may be haunted by a ghost, a furry four-legged ghost, most likely. And she was attacked in her sleep, correct?
No, I was awake when it happened.
I was awake. Okay. So you're going to be doing the staging.
I am.
But yeah, you see, I'm going to ask this one favor. If you, because we're going to get ready to leave in a second here, if you can look up the history of your house, I would be curious, see who lived there,
Right.
and if you can find anything out. So this is Tom Donelson, Coco Konski on the Donelson Files on the Bachelor News Radio Network. We're saying good night. And
Good night.
Usually when the Dr. Larry show comes on, we start it with a trumpet, but tonight we're going to skip that and we'll get right into it. This is Dr. Larry Fedewa, and I am your host for the next hour. And we will be talking tonight about contemporary politics and various aspects of what is going on in Washington, which is my hometown now, or at least close to it. And so I'd like to start with talking about what seems to be an amazing gamble that the Democrat Party is starting. They apparently have adopted the following strategy. First, they put forth a list of second and third-rate candidates for their 2020 presidential nomination, almost all of whom present positions on significant issues like health care, immigration, environment, the Constitution, and foreign policy, which are so far to the left that they really never are going to attract a majority support of the American electorate. And secondly, to make this decision work, they have made a frantic last-minute attempt to remove the current president by the vote of one house of the legislature, even though the Senate, which is controlled by the Republican Party, and by the way, which must convict the president by a two-thirds majority, it's virtually certain that the Senate will exonerate the president, leaving him in office. Nevertheless, the Democrat House proceeds with the impeachment, apparently on the assumption that the process can be manipulated in such a way as to stain the president's name and reputation and thereby divert enough independent voters to defeat Donald J. Trump in his quest for a second term. The goal appears to be to stir up so much hatred of Mr. Trump that the Democrat will win no matter who it is, washed into office by a flood of negative views of Trump and his administration. The customary strategy for an American election is to spend the pre-primary season testing one or more favored candidates to discover whether their early choices have the required qualities to defeat the sitting president. If the field does not look strong enough, the elders of the party would start looking for a better candidate. And to their credit, the Democrats did convince Joseph Biden to join the campaign, but that doesn't seem to be working too well. So instead of this conventional approach, someone has convinced the party to go with the impeachment strategy. From the outside, at least, this looks like a death wish. If the goal is to sway public opinion to vote against Donald J. Trump at any cost, the early signs are suggesting that this strategy is having the opposite effect. And this should not be surprising given the basic proposition beneath the rhetoric, namely, the Dems want to remove the legitimately elected president by an act of Congress and thereby usurp the prerogative of the electorate to decide whether Mr. Trump should be reelected or not. If the impeachment were to lead to his removal from office a few months before the election, the American public would never get the chance to make that decision. The polls show that this idea is not going over too well with the public. On the other hand, President Trump's record as president is filled with extraordinary accomplishments. The latest is his Syrian-Turkey Kurd policy, which appears to have settled a nearly 100-year-old dispute between the Turks and the Kurds and the Syrians. This is a monumental accomplishment worth the price of allowing Russia to solidify its influence with all the parties. Let the Russians worry about the Kurds. As long as we have control of the oil and retain air support and special ops capability, the Kurds may be able to get along without us, and we can then continue our withdrawal from the Middle East. This is only the latest achievement in a long list that the President has succeeded in executing. Besides changing the direction of the economy and trade policy, he has fulfilled many of his other campaign promises as well. If he can engineer a new trade agreement with China and begin removing the tariffs, his record will be even harder to beat. This makes his re-election much more likely. If the Dems really want to beat him in 2020, they had better come up with a better plan. The current one won't get the job done. In fact, it makes one wonder, what on earth are they thinking? So I'd like to welcome to the show tonight Larry Fries, who is a guest, been on the, we have had him as a guest before, and he is a veteran broadcaster and a doctoral candidate and an inspirational speaker. And Larry, welcome again to the Dr. Larry Show.
You know, before Boost, our phone bill was obscene. So we switched to Boost and got lines for the whole family with unlimited gigs for a much more family-friendly price. It's nice to have a phone bill that doesn't require parental controls.
Your family deserves better. Get 4 lines for only $25 per line, each with unlimited gigs. Plus, get up to 4 free Samsung J7 perks with 6 months of Hulu, where you can stream all the shows everyone is talking about. All on the super reliable and super fast nationwide network. Boost makes it easy to switch. Switching makes it easy to save.
This is the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Radio, Radio News Network, and I'm Dr. Larry Fedewa. We were expecting Larry Fries to join us at this point. I assume that something has happened to delay his appearance, but we'll certainly stand by to welcome him when he gets here. There are a number of issues in this whole scenario that we're living through right now. The first issue is this whole gamble that the Democrats are placing before us is based upon their really irrational hate for Mr. Trump. And there have been a lot of speculation as to why there is such a hatred, which started even really before he was even elected. And it certainly grew very quickly after he became the president, the 45th president of the United States. there are many explanations and perhaps many different groups of people that have various concerns about him. Whether it turns into hatred to the extent of ignoring the Constitution and supplanting the Congress for the electorate, that is a really serious question. But the issue seems to have been somewhat exacerbated by the events in my home state here of Virginia last night. And Larry, are you with us now?
Listening. I listened to your intro.
Aha. There he is. The man.
Yeah, I've been listening from the beginning and have appreciated your opening comments. And there's a lot to talk about tonight. I appreciate being a part of the program today.
Well, thanks for coming on. I was just about to talk a little bit about the impact of the vote in Virginia, which is being very widely interpreted around here anyway, as the idea that the suburbs have, particularly in Northern Virginia, have finally sort of triumphed over the more rural representation from the Republicans. And if that is true, then it does say that there is a certain amount of there is certainly a challenge to the Republicans as a whole. I'll give you my basic take on that, and then I'd like to get your opinion. I think that Trump does well with the working class, and the real reason for that, it seems to me, is first of all, he is a very charismatic speaker when he gets in these rallies. I've never seen anything like it. But also, he grew up around the construction sites. He's been talking to the guys who pound the nails and carry the wood and pour the cement ever since he was a youngster. And so he knows how to talk to those people, and that's why they vote for him. The people in the suburbs tend to be a little bit different type of animal. Most of them are college educated, and many, especially the younger ones, have been indoctrinated by the colleges, and therefore they tend to be a little more, considerably more liberal than the working classes by instinct. So it seems to me that the challenge that he has now is to take this development in Virginia seriously and see if they can't formulate an approach to the intellectual, or if not the intellectual, at least the management class in America, and see if we can't swing this whole thing back in his directions. So therefore, I don't know that that the Republicans have actually done that. I think they've really concentrated much more with the Trump approach to the working class. So, what do you think, Larry?
Well, I think that there are some very interesting dynamics taking place in suburbia, but in the end, and we have seen Virginia flirt with sort of moving toward being more Democrat than Republican. And because you have a high population around Washington, D.C. that is growing at a pretty good clip, and other more sort of urban centers in Virginia, that attract that voter populace as well. Plus, we have to admit that there has been a certain level of population transfer that has been taking place, and we can read about that at a number of different sources that indicate that those population transfers also happen to be more favorable toward Democrats. But let me talk about another issue related to this, and that is that suburbia, because they are educated, they do look at and ultimately vote their pocketbook or their wallet. And so here's what I think maybe plays better for Donald Trump. In October, there was 128,000 new jobs. In August and September, those job reports were changed. In August, it was changed to be increased by 51,000 jobs, and in September, increased by 44,000 jobs. The unemployment rate, 3.6%. 158.5 million people employed in the United States. That's the largest number of people in 10 years. Wages have gone up by 3%. The black unemployment rate is the lowest that it's been in 50 years, and 6.5 million new jobs since the president has become president. All of these things are economic indicators that play well for all Americans, but they also play well specifically for suburban United States. And let me give you one more little piece, and that is that the Democrat Party on a local basis does have a tendency to play a little more favorably, and that's why you see a little bit of a change in the state legislature. But when it comes to national politics, it doesn't play the same way. Let me explain. Now, when we talk about what is happening with the Democrat Party and you see them moving so much further to the left, it leaves behind the blue-collar Democrats that you were talking about that Donald Trump has a relationship with. And it also leaves behind many of the independents because they are not looking to move as far left as the Democrat Party has gone. When you start talking about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and AOC and the Squad, and those that would take the party so much further left than what they have been comfortable with before. And so because it leaves those blue-collar Democrats and the independents behind, you see that they are more accepting of Donald Trump. And so on a national basis, that vote is going to be very different than what is happening with respect to local politics, Dr. Larry.
Well, maybe. It seems to me, though, that there are a couple of factors in these off-year elections anyway. One is that the turnout is very low relative to a presidential year. But the other factor is that the economic argument and the economic appeal seems to me quite irrefutable. It's not. You hear the left always talking about a very. It's like there's two different worlds. I mean, they claim that they look at the same data that we do, and they draw entirely opposite conclusions. I was on the radio the other night with a gentleman that did that, and you can't argue facts with them. And why? It's because it's not really a factual issue. It's almost like a religion. I mean, it's a blind faith that is not that will take any factoid or any data and skew it in to support their own bias. And it's amazing whether how that can, where that came from and why that exists in such vehemence. But I guess to me the real question is the economic argument going to be sufficient to convince the suburban, the middle managers and the entrepreneurs. I think the entrepreneurs probably are very receptive to Trump, but the big company and the big government people that are involved either as employees or as contractors or as suppliers, the real question is whether they share this bias or not, and it's not clear to me that they don't.
Well,
so
let me offer.
We'll have
let me
to
offer.
see. But
Let me offer a piece of information here. Well, so we can go back to the 2016 election itself, and we can look at Southwest Pennsylvania, we could look at Northern West Virginia, and then Southeast Ohio, because this is those blue-collar Democrats and independents that I have spoken about.
I
and
think,
that
I think
group
you're
of
right
people,
on that.
Yeah, I think that group of people were those that swept Donald Trump into office, and I think that those same groups of people are not flying with AOC and Elizabeth Warren and the others, and so that's just an example. But let's go back to, the impeachment talk for a moment, because this plays into it a little bit as well, and that is that the majority of voters in the swing states actually oppose the impeachment process. On top of that, the independent voters in those same swing states also oppose that, and so if you want to win.
Majority.
By bigger majority. If you want to win Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, this is not the strategy. There are other polls out there that also support this, and so this is actually detrimental to the Democrats. And so when you combine this issue of the impeachment talk with the fact that people are not interested, and in particular independents, you combine that with the economy, I think that there's a very strong argument that when it comes to a presidential race, and that it's a very different animal than what we see in some closely held suburban state-run races. I don't necessarily look at this as, the results of last night as some sort of, statement that the president is alienating his voter base. And that's what a lot of, sort of the rhetoric is today, that's the case. And I don't see that necessarily.
I don't see it necessarily either, but if I'm a Republican campaign person, I think they would be very wise to take that seriously and see if they can't either verify it or at least debunk it. But we have to step aside for a moment here, and you're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Radio Network.
Since Buffalo Wild Wings is always open late, here are a few things you'll enjoy. Buzzer beaters, wings in 21 signature sauces and seasonings, and great deals on food and beer. Grab select domestic draft beer starting at $4. $4 shareables like street tacos, fried pickles, chili queso dip, mozzarella sticks, and roasted garlic mushrooms, and deals on select liquor and house cocktails. Phew, that's a mouthful. Catch all of the late night action. Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Offers and participation vary. Please drink responsibly. Void where prohibited.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network, and we're talking with Larry Freeze. And the audience has the rare privilege of listening to two Larrys. So
there you go.
I'd like to change the subject now and talk about Mexico for a minute or so. This is a very, I think, a very, very important thing. This so-called battle that they had in Mexico and in western Mexico in the last couple of days, where the Mexican army actually was defeated by the cartel army, has led to a number of analysts saying that Mexico is on the verge of being a failed state, and the current president obviously has decided that trying to fight these people head on has cost the country too many deaths and too much misery. But I think we really, if that happens and the government just basically loses control, as they have in a couple of provinces already, that has enormous implications for America, for the USA.
Well, I think that there's a number of things that are going on there. We see that the cartels are obviously challenging some elements of the border of the United States. That's been an issue for some time. We know that there has been, Texas border patrol that have been killed. The cartel is trying to do everything that they can in order to be able to also control the sort of, northern elements of Mexico. In this skirmish was the LeBaron family that were, in the process of going from Mexico to the United States for some events, and they were killed in the process. You have the ensuing scene could have been, the scene could have been.
That was a mistaken identity. But go ahead.
There's some discussion about that because the LeBaron family has been critical of the drug cartel. And so there was a report that suggested that that they knew exactly who the family was that they were shooting, and in fact that some of the kids were shot in the back as they were running away. So there's a question about whether it was a case of mistaken identity. Footage posted on social media Thursday showed burning vehicles spewing black smoke, heavily armed gunmen blocking roads, dead bodies strewn in the streets, residents fleeing from cover. I mean, it was a military scene. Military-grade weapons, custom-built armored vehicles, cartel henchmen. I mean, kind of the list goes on. And so the Mexican army has a real issue on their hands, and this is part of the reason for which the president came out and has offered assistance, because there's two things. One of the things that he knows is a voting issue right now in the United States that people care about is the security issues of our southern border when it comes specifically to issues of drug distribution, human trafficking, and cartel activity. And so he has offered an opportunity to be able to assist the Mexican government in trying to find a way to be able to obliterate the Mexican cartel from the border area.
They've turned him down.
Yeah. Well, we haven't heard the end of that yet.
This could be the equivalent of the ISIS caliphate right on our doorstep, and we all saw what kind of barbarity that these people had. The savageness of the people was just incredible. But frankly, these cartel people are cut out of the same cloth. I think that this is a real bombshell that's potentially and the fact that the Mexican army, the Mexican president has said that he doesn't want a war with the cartel. It's almost like surrender.
Well, there's a truth to that, and this is part of the reason why I don't think this is the end of the discussion between the president and the president of Mexico. I think that there will be some continued dialogue around this unless the new president of Mexico has been paid off by the cartels, which is what has happened historically there in Mexico, and a reason for which the cartels have had basically free reign of their activity on both human trafficking as well as drug trafficking. So it remains to be seen, but obviously there is a question about whether or not indeed Mexico is on a trajectory to become gangland, governed by warlordism. I mean, that's a question, and so this is a tough situation. But I think the United States ultimately will secure its border. This will become one of those issues that will create another level of tension, and the president will use it as a means of trying to be able to make the border wall a greater priority between now and the general election.
Yeah, but if this turns into another Alamo kind of situation, the wall won't be enough. Well, I don't think we're going to solve this tonight, but it does seem to me to be a potentially a very dangerous situation.
Well, I think what is different this time is that the Mexicans have showed that they are a little more capable of being industrious. They have more arms. They're more liberal. The cartels actually have infiltration into parts of the government. And so it's a little bit different than it has been before because El Chapo established a good part of this. The Sinaloa cartel has also been, fairly well entrenched. And so we're going to see, their level of capability if there's an escalation of, war, if you will, against them.
Well, it's a danger signal, and the whole idea that this president has been advocating right from the beginning of his campaign of strengthening our southern border is definitely is certainly timely. I mean, if we get a gangland, they're gonna keep attacking, and the more defense we have available to begin with, the better off we're going to be. And I think you're correct. I agree with you on that. But the other big issue, and I know that you've got a lot of thoughts about this, and I phrase it as, what about the 31? The 31 House members who are representing Trump territory, and what is going to be the impact of that contingent on the whole idea of this impeachment in the House. I mean, I think the Senate is already pretty well armed, and they're pretty well organized. But now it seems like one of the big reasons why Nancy Pelosi did not jump on the impeachment wagon immediately was she was trying to protect these poor folks, and a number of them have voted, have not supported the whole gun control business that they've been trying to put forward. But that, it seems to me, is one of the really key issues here as far as the next few months. I mean, if she doesn't allow it to actually ever get any farther than talk, instead of and not have a vote, I get to develop the articles of impeachment and then to actually vote them in, which theoretically they could do, because all they need is a majority. So the first question would be whether she actually will do that, and the second is, if she does, will she win? And I know you've got some very strong ideas about that, and I think we I'd like to hear some of them. Well, I know some of them because I listen to you occasionally.
Well, so I think that there are a number of factors at play. there has been pressure by what I am terming the uber alt left of the Democrat Party to at least, take a poll and understand where people stand and whether or not there should be an impeachment inquiry. She resisted that for a period of time because the public polls were not indicating that the majority of Americans favored the impeachment inquiry. So she held off on that because she recognizes that there is a political component to all of this. Well, but for the fact that the left part of the party, became more impatient with her, she placated them with this last vote. And, of course, they voted mostly along, political lines. There was no Republican who voted for this. There were a few Democrats who are protecting themselves because they were elected in states that the president won in the general election, and so they know that they are in a particular place of vulnerability. So they didn't want to give any additional ammunition to people in those states because they could stand up and say, I didn't vote for that. That's a political tactic. But what is sort of moving next is that as this inquiry kind of builds, she's still waiting for additional support. But one of the things that we just got finished talking about was that there are Democrats in swing states and independents in swing states who are not in favor of this. And so right now she's holding off because she doesn't, number one, have a smoking gun. She doesn't have, something that is going to be, the great big fact or the bombshell, story.
Right.
In fact, everything has been refuted.
In fact, they don't have much
so,
of a case at all.
They don't.
But
and so,
we're going to have to step aside here for a second. And this is the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Hey, this is L.A. Bachelor reminding you if you're looking for real discussion on sports, politics, religion, and other topics, you need to join us on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern at WCOMFM.org, on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at blogtalkradio.com/LA-Bachelor, and on Thursdays at the same web address. Follow us on Facebook at Pad Nation, on Twitter, Pad Nation, the number 2 at Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can email us with your requests, your comments, your concerns, anything you want at our email address at LABachelor with a T, BATCHELOR 40 at gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Pad Nation, Instagram, and of course, if you miss any part of our broadcast, make sure you go to thebachelorpadnetwork.com and listen and enjoy the Bachelor Pad.
You've been listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network. We generally don't call ourselves the Pad anymore, but occasionally we slip. And we're talking to Larry Fries of the gentleman who is one of the elite broadcasters in the conservative radio spectrum, and we're talking about what is the sort of bread and butter politics of this behind the scenes impeachment situation on the Democrat side. And Larry, you were expounding on your concept here of what is going on, and I guess we interrupted you, so why don't you just complete your thought?
Yeah, I guess to sort of continue with this, there's some interesting elements for Nancy Pelosi because she's trying to balance the politics of her party with the American public and public opinion. And in that balance, there's a continued inquiry, if you will, without a formal adoption of impeachment proceedings. And then, of course, there are the news stories that come out selectively by Adam Schiff and the process and procedures by which they are proceeding really are not like the bipartisan methodologies that were used under President Nixon and Bill Clinton, where the defendant had representation in the hearings, had the opportunity to be able to gather data and evidence and to be able to formulate a defense if that were to happen. And so there is this continual sort of leakage in order to be able to hopefully build up a level of doubt that would increase the poll numbers to get people to a place where they would give effectively Nancy Pelosi the permission that she needs in order to be able to create a formalized impeachment vote, inquiry, and proceedings. And so this is the balance that they're going through, but it's not playing out well in front of the American people. Those that are strict adherents to the left think that this is great. Those that are strict adherents to the right say this is unconscionable. And then, of course, you have the groups in the middle, centrist Republicans, centrist Democrats, and independents, that largely allowed for this process to take place while under the Mueller investigation, but now recognize this as a repeat of what they did then and are not as patient in this process because they feel like there was enough evidence or lack thereof, there was at least a decision that exonerated the president from all of these things. And so this pattern of bringing up, an abuse of power or a quid pro quo is the same pattern that they had before. Now, my rhetorical question is, if the president of Ukraine said on two separate occasions that Donald Trump did not press a quid pro quo on Ukraine, or if Zelensky, president of Ukraine, said that there was no pressure from Donald Trump, then my question is, where are all of these other accusations coming from? Because if the president of Ukraine didn't feel it, then where is the culpability? And today we heard that Sunderland retracted his statement and clarified it by saying that he did not believe that Ukraine felt that there was any level of withholding of aid, so it could not have possibly been quid pro quo. And you can read that on any news outlet today. You don't have to just listen to it on this sort of conservative talk radio. And so if those are, two or three of the facts that are out there, then what's the purpose for the continuation of Adam Schiff and an inquiry? I just throw that out there for anybody to answer.
Yeah, well, I guess my speculation on that is that they are, first of all, they have to continue. They can't stop now, because if they stop now, they admit that the whole thing was a farce to begin with. So
well, isn't that a shame?
Carry on, and then the question is where are the facts? They're disputing every single fact that seems to be that is put forth. They're coming up with their own stories, which are frankly fiction, and so you've got this whole movement is being fueled by the really frankly illogical and almost feverish hatred of this man, and there are a lot of the motivation for that, I think, varies. There are certain groups that are just they believe everything that Rachel Maddow says, and they will believe anything that is against him, and nothing that is for him, and that's just because they're so biased that it's almost a religion to them. But then there's also a much more cynical group, and that would be the politicians themselves, who know that they can't really do much in the way of either good for the country or, more importantly, good for themselves, and if they're not in power. So the whole purpose of being in politics is to be in power, and they don't feel like they can survive very long if they're going to be cut out of major positions and major responsibilities and major opportunities to make money, as the Bidens did, and the Clintons. So that's another group, and then there's the third group, which I think is sincerely upset about the fact that this president and his administration are radically changing all of the rules, particularly in foreign policy. And I have puzzled for a long time as to why the intelligence community seems to be so caught up in the anti-Trump, the never-Trump mode. And I really think that some of them they're just very afraid that if America abandons its world police idea and its savior of the world idea, that they're somehow compromising the ideals on which the country is built. But then there's also the group in the military-industrial complex that realize that without all these wars, their opportunities to continue making a lot of money is just not going to be there. And whether you're a bureaucrat and you want more money for your purposes of your shall we say, your budget, I guess, is the simplest way to talk about it. If you want more money for your budget, and that brings you more personal opportunities and more power, and some of them really care a lot more about power than they do about money. So I think that that probably doesn't cover everybody, but I think that those are some of the segments that are so adamantly opposed to this president. And frankly, there were a lot of Republicans that were in some of those groups to begin with, and some of them, quite a few of them, have actually resigned from Congress, or at least they're not running again. So by the time, if in fact Donald Trump can win the next election, that the Republican Party will be really 100% his. And if he isn't, then the Bushes and the other more conventional Republicans might have a good comeback. So that's my analysis. Maybe more than we wanted to hear, huh?
Well, I have a montage at the opening of my program, and that montage is the Democrats who were railing against the Republicans during the Clinton impeachment process, and you hear the voices of Chuck Schumer, Maxine Waters, Jerry Nadler, all screaming how an impeachment process takes away the votes of the voters of the United States, and that they hate the president more than they, love this country because they're trying to impeach him. And so, this montage is really fabulous because it speaks to the issue of their defense of the president at the time. Now, the reason I bring this up is because, as you spoke at the beginning of this, you suggested that they're trying to do everything that they possibly can in order to stay in power. And so the very last part of this montage says, we fear that if we don't impeach this president, that he will be reelected. And that's exactly what their strategy is, as you said in your show opening. And they fear that they cannot beat him from a policy standpoint. They can't beat him from an economic success standpoint. They can't touch him when it comes to foreign affairs and the ability of putting the United States back on a particular track They can't manage things with respect to tax reform, wage increases, job opportunities, and the list goes on. So the only thing they have left is to try to find a way to be able to get back in power by discrediting or by finding a way to impeach him or to otherwise peel off people that would support him. Now, I'm going to say one other thing, and that is that it's okay, because many people don't like the president, and if they don't like him because of a personality thing, that's great. People didn't really like Bill Clinton that much either, but they said that he's a good president. The results speak for itself, and so that's the way the voters have to look at this. So you might not like him, but his results are pretty darn fabulous. And where do you haven't seen these results from any president since Ronald Reagan. Bill Clinton had great success, from an economic standpoint. That's true, but not to the success that Donald Trump has. So
hold that
there are
thought.
some real. Okay.
Hold that thought, Larry, and we'll talk about the only other option that they have. When we come back, we're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Join Barry Barnes for Locker Talk on the Bachelor Pad Network as he presents NFL news and evaluates players. Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com.
Hello, this is Sandy Eason, the host of Sandy's Secrets. Come and join us, where we will be talking about women's issues of sexuality, sensuality, and self-love. We'll be coming soon, exclusively on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network, and we've been talking about the Democratic strategy for trying to take over the government again, whether you could say by hook or crook, and maybe there's a little dishonesty going on here. But the only other possibility that they have, it seemed to me, is to get some kind of a equally powerful and charismatic candidate to run against Trump, and clearly that's not the group that they've got now. So they will have to come up with somebody else, and there don't seem to be any really obvious substitutes right now. Although I guess there's Bloomberg and the talk about Mrs. Clinton again, or maybe even Mrs. Obama. Three of the leading possibilities. But don't you think that we're going to see a different candidate when all the dust settles?
Well, it's interesting that with all that we have heard about with respect to Burisma, Ukraine, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, that Joe Biden still sits at the top of the Democrat field. Elizabeth Warren has alienated many corporate donors, bankers, Wall Street, executives because of her high tax, wealth tax, corporate tax mantra, and the cost of a full-blown single-payer healthcare system. And so then you have Kamala Harris, who has pretty much fallen out of the race. She's the next one to leave. Beto O'Rourke gone for his admission of a take your guns policy. And so you have Pete Buttigieg, who is coming up in the polls, but Joe Biden is still there at the top because of name recognition and other things that have given him the opportunity to be able to still be that front runner. In some of the national polls, he's tied with President Trump. And so that gives the Democrats a level of hope. So there he sits. In the end, whether or not he is the candidate remains to be seen, but I think he's the one that has the highest probability of the current field. Now, you mentioned Michelle and Michael and Hillary. And part of the reason for which Barack Obama has not endorsed Joe Biden is because it is likely that he is saving this for a possibility of Michelle entering the race at a last minute, taking that opportunity to be the white knight to save the party. Well, Hillary Clinton...
the white knight,
Yeah, the white knight. Hillary Clinton, yes, and and I use that, Hillary Clinton is sort of using that strategy as a potential way for her to be able to get back in the race. She's got her toe in the water right now, engaging certain reaction. Michael Bloomberg hasn't hinted anything, but he has enough ability to be able to enter at a last moment's notice and to be able to make a splash. And then the question becomes, are there other people out there that are sort of off the radar? I mean, I don't know the answer, but I think that if I were a betting man right now, I would say Joe Biden 51% and an outsider 49%, because I just think that the Democrat Party is comfortable enough, or at least the electorate is comfortable enough with Joe Biden.
Well, we'll see when Iowa and New Hampshire come in. He's not doing too well in Iowa, according to the polls. Of course, the problem is the polls are just not very reliable. And so we really don't have a lot of insight into the actual situation. But it seems.
Well, you've had Democrat winners previously who have lost the first 2 or 3 races, but have come on strong, and so that's a possible scenario for Joe Biden. But I think in the end, he's still going to out-Trump Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg when it comes down to it.
Oh, I agree. I think that's clear, but I don't think that he's going to cut it, and I think that there's a lot of disenchantment about him in Democrat circles. In fact, some of the people I've talked to recently from the other side have all kind of dismissed him as like he wasn't even under consideration anymore as far as they were concerned. But we'll see. And of course, organized labor has something to do with it, and that's probably his strongest advocates on a national scale. So anyway, it's an exciting time, isn't it?
Well, it's a good time to sort of pay attention to presidential politics because, you have the dynamics of public polling versus political placation that's taking place, and that's what Nancy Pelosi's job is. And then, of course, you have the whole juxtaposition of the Democrats trying to find some level of resonance with a constituency that allows them to feel confident that they have some kind of message that will bring a very strong, turnout to the polls. But all indications at this point are not showing any of the current crop of candidates that actually can hold a candle to Donald Trump, given the successes and the things that we've been sort of reiterating in the course of the program. The other thing is from a campaigning standpoint, I mean, we're seeing it again tonight. He's got crowds that are significant, and people have poo-pooed, the whole crowd thing. It is a piece of anecdotal evidence when people camp out 24 hours before a rally and in order to be able to get in, and then when you have another, few thousand people outside that were not able to get in. And the one thing about Donald Trump is he is a very strong campaigner. Think about the current crop of Democrats who can hold a candle to Donald Trump and his ability to be able to traverse the country and campaign. I think that is an advantage that he has. But we'll go all the way back to the beginning of the program, Dr. Larry, and talk about these issues of suburban voters and whether or not they're becoming disenfranchised with the president, or if they're disenfranchised with, the way in which the national DNC is moving. And I think it comes down to that, and it comes down to what is always, the mantra, and that is, it's the economy, stupid, it's the economy. And right now, the economy still plays in the favor of the president.
Well, we're just about out of time, and there's one factor that we didn't mention much about, and that is the idea that George Soros and company bought the Virginia results, and that and Donald Trump now had more money than all of the Democrats put together. So, but Larry, we're getting ready to leave here, and we want to thank you for coming on tonight, and we appreciate your help. And this is Dr. Larry Fedowa, and I'm wishing everybody a good evening, and have a happy week.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Larry.